Hello everyone and welcome to a very highly anticipated video for the channel, and that is of course my Arrow season ranking from worst to best. I have waited to make this video for so long. I wanted to do it ages ago, but I said nope, let's wait until the show is actually over and finished. And with that all being said, we are finally here now, here to rank every season. Now do bear in mind, this is my own personal opinion. If you do not agree with it, that is perfectly fine, you're entitled to yours. Let me know about it in the comments below and maybe we can have a friendly discussion about it. But with that all being said, let's get into my rankings for every season of Arrow, from the worst to the best. And to absolutely nobody's surprise, bottom of the list, easily, without question, Season 4. This season is truly terrible. I have only ever watched this season twice in full. When it originally aired, most of it, and then I watched it again in the summer to cement my thoughts on this season. That was in 2016. I have not watched this season in almost 4 years. That is how bad it is. I genuinely hate this season with a passion. In terms of worst seasons of TV I've ever watched, this is unquestionably in the top 5. Too many reasons to list as to why this season doesn't work. So I'm going to try my best to condense it because I don't want to ramble. I think just the main thing that didn't work about Season 4 of Arrow for me was that it didn't feel like Arrow. It felt like Felicity and Friends featuring the Green Arrow, because Felicity was the main character, her family was so integral to everything, and it was just wrong. Absolutely wrong. I thought the way that she was written this season in particular was so awful. She became so overbearing and so monotonous and preachy that it honestly got on my nerves to an unsufferable amount. It was horrible. Her mum as well hated her character completely, and just this change of direction felt wrong. It was completely wrong for this show. Like I said, it was a betrayal of everything this show was before and is afterwards. This season completely gives it the middle finger. The tone as well this season was all over the place. They tried to go for this light-hearted tone in the first half of the season, and as soon as they realised that it didn't work, they completely scrapped it. It just ends up with this very confusing tone where I can't tell if they're trying to be comedic and be light-hearted, or if they're trying to be dark and serious. It just never made sense to me. A lot of the stories for the characters I didn't care about. I thought Oliver's storyline throughout the whole season of him being the mayor, it was just there as an excuse to say Oliver was doing stuff, even though I don't really feel like they dwelled into it anywhere near enough. Thea and the Bloodlust, a very repetitive storyline, didn't enjoy it at all. Diggle's storyline with his brother, I liked the chemistry that John and Andy Diggle had with each other as characters, but I felt the resolution to that storyline was atrocious, and Andy Diggle as a character was just, he ended up being a very weak character in my opinion, when in reality, he should have been far more interesting, because this was a storyline that they set up for 3 seasons, and they did absolutely nothing with it. The only real character in this entire season who has a really good story arc throughout the whole season is Laurel, and they kill her off in episode 18, which just makes all that redundant, which leads me on to another big problem, which is killing off Laurel. I've never ever agreed with this decision at all. It felt wrong to me because, number one, she's so integral to the Green Arrow in the comics that to do such a stupid thing as kill her off in the TV show, to kill off the Black Canary, made no sense other than to remove an obstacle in the way of Olicity. That's what it felt like to me, and it was just completely stupid. Her death scene was terrible. It was genuinely crap. Even Katie Cassidy in interviews has taken the mick out of how bad this death scene was, and has even admitted that she didn't want to go. It was just the writers did it for whatever reason, and it was pathetic and it was stupid. And the entire back half of the season, honestly, is painful to watch. I remember doing the rewatch of this season in the summer of 2016, and it was so hard to get through it because the episodes were just so terrible. The fight choreography was out of the picture. Oliver forgot how to fight as well, even though season prior he was being trained by Ra's al Ghul. Apparently this season, if you spend 6 months away, you completely forget how to fight. That's Arrow logic. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And then you have the main villain of Damien Dark. I think Neil McDonough is a good actor, and he's giving it his all in this role because he's so charismatic, but he does not work on Arrow. And his whole plan about wanting to nuke Star City and then grow a dome world and feed everyone in this little dome with corn. You know, he wants to regrow the world with corn. What is happening? What's going on? It was too stupid, too ludicrous, and it was too massive a scale for a show like Arrow. It just went too overboard. Just having a villain in general who had magic powers, it just made him as Damien Darhk look completely stupid when he doesn't kill Oliver when he has numerous chances. And then it also just makes him far too overpowered as an antagonist for Team Arrow to realistically face. It's a double-edged sword. It just doesn't work either way. It's just not a good mix at all. And then to top it all off, you had the flashbacks, which were terrible this season. Oliver just runs around Lian Yu because everyone hated the Season 3 flashbacks because all he did was run around Hong Kong. Here he just runs around Lian Yu with some statues and some possession, and it's just... I really don't remember anything from these flashbacks, to be perfectly honest, other than they were absolutely terrible. It's a season that I'm not very keen ever to want to rewatch ever again. It's just a season that I have no fondness for, and I think will proudly stay at the bottom of this list and shall never be moved out of there for the rest of my life. Right, moving on to number 7, we have Season 3. I will say there is a bit of a jump in quality between these two because, I mean, Season 4 of Arrow, shit. Season 3 is very mediocre to slightly bad, in my opinion. And I know that reception of this season has kind of gone up a little bit over the years, but I've never been one of those people. I've always found Season 3 to just be a bit very underwhelming to me, especially because it came off the back of Season 1 and 2, which you'll be seeing later on in this list. Season 3 really had the chance to be very good, and it just didn't reach those same heights. Now, the first 9 episodes of the season are good. The only exception to that for me was the mid-season finale, The Climb, where they have the fight on the top of the cliff with Ra's al Ghul. That's the only episode of that was great. And then from that point onwards, the season just got progressively worse to the point where in the back half of Season 3, for the final few episodes, it really is interdistinguishable with the quality of episodes you got in Season 4. It was that bad. It was genuinely that terrible. I think the main excuse for this behind the scenes was that obviously the main writers for Season 1 and 2, that being Greg Berlanti and Andrew Kreisberg, obviously jumped over to The Flash to become the showrunners for that show, and that just left it in Mark Guggenheim's control as the sole showrunner. And I think just this season just shows all his flaws as a showrunner. He's just not someone who could write a compelling storyline from beginning to the end. And it shows with this season, because having this set up with who killed Sarah, it was interesting, except it just completely wasted Sarah as a character. She went from this really interesting character in Season 2, and then she becomes a plot device, which I just was never comfortable with. The whole reasoning with the revelation that Malcolm drugged Thea to kill Sarah so that Oliver would have to fight Ra's al Ghul to save him and Thea, even though Oliver could only barely just beat Malcolm in a fist fight the last time they met. It was honestly ludicrous. It's one of the worst revelations in Arrow's history. It was genuinely terrible. And the reason that for me the back half of the season doesn't work is because they just really don't prioritize on the right areas enough. This is of course the season where they really start to hamp up on the soap opera-ness of the show and the olicity drama, because it overtakes the focus of the season, which should have been on the League of Assassins, because we'd spent 2 seasons building up to these guys to finally see them in action. And it just felt like they didn't really want to do anything with them. And so when you end up getting to that back half of the season where they actually remember, oh yeah, we've got to actually do stuff with these guys, it's so rushed. That also plays into Ra's al Ghul as a villain. Again, this is a guy who could have been a really cool antagonist, because I love his character in the comics. Of course, we've seen him in the films with the Dark Knight trilogy. But here he's just nothing. He's a nobody. He really does not do anything this entire season. I feel sorry for Matt Mabel as an actor, because he's just given nothing to do, and he's just not given enough attention, and he's barely in this season for a main villain. I think he only appears in about, 7 to 8 episodes of the season, which just isn't enough for a main antagonist. The season, character-wise, it doesn't really progress many of the characters. The only ones that really feel like they go anywhere in this season are Laurel, because she takes up the mantle of Black Canary, which was one of the few things I liked about this season. Thea kind of goes on an arc where she ends up by the end of the season becoming Red Arrow / Speedy. Roy's storyline was quite good. I enjoyed his storyline, and I liked the way that they exited his character out of the show. Also in season 3 we had the Hong Kong flashbacks, which were, yeah, they were terrible. All it is Oliver running around Hong Kong. That is literally it. And yeah, those flashbacks were awful. It's just a season that I just don't look back on with much excitement. It's not a terrible season. I could put it higher, but there's so many things wrong with this season that carry into season 4. And for me, it just does not make this season very rewatchable in my opinion. So, number 7 is season 3. And now we have season 6. Now, this is kind of a weird one for me because this season very much feels like a season written by a creative team that really didn't have any idea of what they wanted to do because they were so exhausted of ideas. This is just a very by the numbers, very safe, been there, done that season. There's not really a lot here that is fresh and new, and when there is, it doesn't really feel like it's explored with much depth at all. I do enjoy the final 6 episodes. For me, that's the only period of the season where it really knew what it wanted to do, had it aim for its story arc, and just had a great stretch of episodes where obviously you have the episode where Oliver gets drugged with vertigo and he sees hallucinations of Adrian Chase, which was absolutely amazing, and then obviously progressing the Diaz storyline even more. That stuff was great. It's the first 17 episodes of this season where my problems really lie with season 6. It is genuinely amazing how inconsistent the first 17 episodes are. You could genuinely play a bingo game as to the episode quality you were going to get per week. It was insane. You would have some amazing episodes, like you'd have the Deathstroke 2-part, which I thought were really good episodes. You'd have episode 13, which was a really great episode for ending the whole Caden James storyline. You had episode 15, which was pretty solid as well. But then you just had so many crap ones in there as well, to be perfectly honest. Episode 4, which just felt like a listy fanfiction role reversal. Episode 7, which was crap. You had the Timaro Civil War episode, which was crap. You had the episode where Diggle and Oliver have a hissy fit for an episode. It just didn't really feel as if... It just felt like they were just going through the motions, and it just didn't feel very fresh, and it didn't feel very engaging for me personally. Also, I really don't like how this season addressed the cliffhanger from the end of season 5, Lanyu being blown up and all the main characters being on the island. We cut to season 6, and oh, it's alright guys, the whole island blew up, but it's alright, no one important died other than Samantha, which was the most obvious option for any character that was going to die. And then Thea was in a coma because Willa Holland was desperate to get out of the show, but they didn't want to let go of her, so she's like, alright, put me in a coma, please. It was such an underwhelming revelation. There was a lot of storylines that felt like they were just rinse and repeat of what we had beforehand. Like, for example, this season we had Oliver being hunted by the FBI and Samantha Watson, who, by the way, was a crap character. That was literally just a repeat of season 1 when they were after the Hood, and season 3, especially in the back half, when they were after the Arrow. Also, they have this storyline where a member of Team Arrow betrays the team and sells them out. Obviously, this season being Renee. We already had this in the season prior with Evelyn. It was genuinely crazy. It just felt like at times the writers genuinely didn't want to take risks at all. And then when they do something different and fresh, it is so undercooked that it's honestly pathetic. Like, there's the whole Civil War storyline with New Team Arrow and Original Team Arrow. It was just not well done at all. New Team Arrow were just so cocky and wrong in their simulations of what they thought of what Oliver was doing. And it just made it so cringy to watch on screen. And it especially ruined Renee and Dinah as characters, who were characters that I really liked in season 5. They were set up in that season, I really liked them by the end. And then in this season, they basically do their absolute best to make them as unlikable as possible, especially Dinah. And speaking of Dinah as well, she has that storyline with Vince being brought back, and then it's revealed that Vince is the vigilante, which again was just a very underwhelming revelation. Carried on from season 5. And then there's the idea of having two villains for the first half and back half of the season. Now, in paper, this is a really good idea because shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. have done this really well. But with Season 6, they did it the wrong way around for me personally. I really wasn't a fan of Caden James. I found him a very boring villain. I love Michael Emerson, but his dialogue was just so stale, and he has such a generic motivation of, oh, you killed my son. It was basically just a reverb of Prometheus's motivation from the previous season. The fact that he was a hacker as well, not my thing. I really don't care for hacking on Arrow, so having a villain that embodies that just doesn't work for me. And the fact they stretched him out as the main villain for 13 episodes, over half of the season, just didn't work, because by the time Ricardo Diaz came in for the second half of the season, who I thought was a far better antagonist, a lot of the stuff with him, although I really loved him as a villain, just felt very rushed, because it was almost as if, oh, we finally got the big bad we want, but we haven't got as many episodes. We're just going to have to cram it all as much as we can. There are still things that I do like about Season 8. I do enjoy the Black Siren and Quentin storyline throughout the whole season and the Black Siren redemption arc. I did enjoy that storyline, and like I said, I think Quentin and Black Siren were my favourite characters this season. And I liked some of the themes that this season was going for. For example, one of the main key themes of this season was family, and how obviously Oliver's family and how that's broken apart with the Civil War, and then obviously with him and his son and all that. I think the themes of this season are very good and very strong. It's just the execution of the storylines surrounding them, which is what lets this season down for me personally. It's not a season that I hate, but I think it's a season that I find more frustrating to watch because of the fact that those first 17 episodes could just never hit their stride. And then when the season did hit its stride, although it was great, it just felt a little bit too little too late for me personally. Out of all of the seasons on this countdown, this is probably the one that disappoints me the most, because of the fact that this season had such potential of being so much better than it ultimately was. We had a new showrunner this season with Beth Schwartz. We had the prison story arc, which we were going to be introduced to in the first half of the season. There was just so many things that sounded so different about this season. I really enjoyed Black Siren this season. Once again, I thought she was really good. I really liked the way that they set up the Ninth Circle and Dante, who are kind of sort of the main villains of the season, but not really. We'll get onto the actual main villain later. But I really enjoyed them, and I loved their setup, and they were so different to any of the other villains that we'd had on the show. And I just wish we had more of them, because I found them really interesting and the way that they operated. I also thought the fight choreography in this season was a lot better. It was a big step up from Season 6, which had a good choreography, but I felt like the editing around it was pretty poor. This season, I think the fight scenes and the choreography and the editing was far better. It was a big step up from the previous season. I also really enjoyed Diaz a lot more in this season as well, because whereas in Season 6, he was kind of left for the back few episodes to rush some development for his character, here in this season, he feels a lot more focused and a lot better written, and especially his rivalry with Oliver is far better in this season. I think that's mainly as well due to the arc that we had for that first half of the season, with him trying to go up against Oliver whilst he's still in prison. I just really enjoy that, and Diaz just felt far more of a legitimate threat in this season than he ever did in Season 6. It was just a shame that they decided to kind of throw away his character after the prison arc storyline by trying to have him in the Suicide Squad and then killing him off in just a very disappointing manner. From episode 1 to 9 is the best run of episodes Arrow has had since Season 2. It was genuinely that amazing. The whole prison story arc, it was such a different and fresh location, completely different to anything we'd had before. And it just made it such this really cool place to be in, to see these different sides of Oliver, see him a bit more ruthless, a bit more antagonistic than we usually like to see, which I really enjoyed. And then it all culminated in episode 7, which was the Slab Side Redemption, which is one of my favourite ever episodes of Arrow. It was absolutely brilliant. And then it almost felt as if with this season, as soon as they got out of the prison, they didn't really know what to do. It was kind of as if their roadmap for the season was the prison story arc, and then after that, just thought, oh, we've got to do another 14 episodes. You know, what are we going to do? They're just things that don't add up from these two halves. And I think the main indicative of that was Emiko as the main villain. I just didn't really care for her as an antagonist, and I'm going to be a bit controversial with this opinion that I say. Emiko is the weakest main villain of any season of Arrow. even more so than Damien Dark, because at least Damien had a presence and had a good rivalry with Oliver, and you had Neil McDonough in the role who was really good. I didn't buy into Emiko's motivations, because the first half of the season she's running around as the Green Arrow, this supposed new Green Arrow, trying to save Star City, and then all of a sudden it's revealed, oh no, she's actually with the Ninth Circle and she's trying to discredit Oliver. The two things just don't add up at all, and I never thought that Shichimuka really could bring out the menace that she was supposed to with Emiko. I just don't think she was particularly the right choice for the role, in my opinion. They tried to make it this big thing, and as a result, they kind of shoved aside the Ninth Circle and Dante, which for me should have been the main focus of this season, but because they try and shove her front and center, they just feel really underused and underdeveloped. I really hated the finale for the season, because it just felt like it was trying to rush everything together, having this Emiko redemption arc, which just came out of nowhere, and I just never believed that the character should have been redeemed in the first place. Another thing I wasn't entirely keen on as well was them bringing back the Suicide Squad, or Task Force X, or whatever name they call it for this season for license purposes. They felt very wasted this season. They made such a big deal about them coming back, and then they only appeared in about 2 episodes and then were disbanded. To top it all off for this season, you have the flash forwards now. For the first few, I actually didn't mind them. I thought they were interesting and quite good. It was when they started to branch them out and include far more characters from the present day, and we had Mia/Black Star show up. That for me was where the flash forwards just began to lose me completely, because it just ended up, for me, not only not being that interesting of a storyline, but it also took away from the current day storyline, because we're seeing all these characters who are alive in current day who are also alive in the future, so it just takes away any stakes or sense of threat when those characters are in danger. I just don't really have a lot to say about Season 7. It just really enjoyed that first half of the season. It was just an utter shame that it just felt like after that they ran out of ideas. There was the odd good episode afterwards. I just felt like the season never really knew what it wanted to be afterwards, and so as a result, I just came out of the season with a very mixed appreciation. It very much is like the reverse of Season 6. You take Season 6 and reverse it, voila, you get Season 7. Number 4, we have the most recent season of Arrow, which is, of course, Season 8. Now, I know this has proved to be a little bit of a divisive season with a couple of people. There's some people that I know and trust that really don't like this season, and one person in particular who thinks it's the worst season of the show. Now, as you can see by this ranking, I don't agree with that, because I actually really enjoy this season, and there is a huge jump in quality between this and Season 7. This truly did feel like a love letter season to the fans, with it being the final season, and obviously with them having to wrap up all of these storylines and all the characters that we've come to know and love over all of these years. This season just felt like it was written with such care and attention to really trying to give us the best of Arrow, and just really trying to make this whole season in a way feel like a prolonged series finale, which was kind of a unique feel to it, and it was something that I really enjoyed about this season. I really loved the storylines that they gave to a lot of the characters. Oliver's story of learning to accept fate, with him obviously doing all these tasks for the Monitor for this impending crisis, which I really enjoyed, and Stephen Amell's acting in this season. His best acting in any season ever, in my opinion, of Arrow. Earth 2 Laurel's storyline in this season is also brilliant. This is, for me, my favourite stuff with her is in this season. Kate Cassidy destroyed it this season. She was amazing as well. I really liked Diggle's story in this season. Really enjoyed what they did with him. All the characters they brought back. Of course, we had so many returning characters from so many different seasons. We had so many farewells with these characters as well. And it was just so brilliantly well done in terms of how they handled it. It all just came together in a season that just really got to me emotionally. And maybe that is why I do have a bit of fondness to it compared to other people. Now, the season isn't necessarily perfect. There are a couple of things that I don't think work 100% about this season. Unlike normal seasons of Arrow, this season only has 10 episodes compared to the usual 23 or 22 episodes. And with this, they're trying to set up Crisis and this potential spin-off storyline that we could be getting with the Green Arrow and the Canary show, which may or may not get picked up. And so at times it does feel as if they are trying to set up too much, as they're trying to do these two things whilst also ending the show. And I feel like if they were going to do that, they should have either removed either the Crisis setup or the spin-off setup, or they should have extended the season. I think had they gone with one of those two options, I think this season could have really stood a big chance of breaking into the top 3. But because of that reason, I just couldn't really put it any higher. And also the flash forward stuff returns in the first 3 episodes of the season, and I wasn't particularly keen on it. I actually quite enjoyed bringing them to the present day because I feel like they did a lot more of their characters in the present day that I personally enjoyed a lot more, even though at the same time it did kind of mean that we didn't get as much stuff with some other characters like Renee or Dinah. But to be perfectly honest, I wasn't too fussed about that. With Renee, I'd already kind of grew to enjoy him anyway, and with Dinah, I just never really cared for her character, so that kind of thing didn't really bother me at all. And this season actually made me like Mia Smoke more as a character, which was something I never thought I would say. But I actually didn't mind her this season. I thought she was actually a lot better than she was in Season 7. And of course, the series finale was also really good. I really enjoyed that. And it was just a really nice way to wrap up the show. Was it the best series finale ever? No. But it didn't need to be. It just needed to end things in a good place, and that's exactly what it did. And for this entire season, this truly was a love letter, and whether you stand on this season or not, whether you enjoyed it or not, I personally dug it. I really enjoyed it, and for me it was a brilliant way to send off what is one of my favourite TV shows over the past few years.
I'll see you on the other side, Oliver.
To be perfectly honest with you guys, Season 5 was very close to breaking into the top 2 of this list, because honestly the top 3 could easily shift around. Anybody could have Season 5 or 1 or 2 at the top of their respective lists, and I wouldn't be able to argue it, because these 3 seasons are absolutely fantastic. Season 5 really does benefit from the fact that it really went back to the roots of the show, especially when this came off of the back of the worst 2 seasons of the show in my opinion in Season 3 and Season 4. Season 5 was basically a season that had to be a success. If it wasn't, fans would drop off the show like flies, so the showrunners really had to up their game and really win back a lot of people, including myself, and they did that in some style. Exploring Oliver killing again, having a villain with a deep layer of complexity and a mystery behind them, and then when they were revealed, having it completely change Oliver's dynamic with a character that he almost assumed as a close friend beforehand. Adrian Chase / Prometheus for me is one of the best villains that Arrow has ever had, without question. His chemistry with Oliver is some of the best that I've seen on any Arrowverse show, and Josh Segarra proved to me that the personal villains on Arrow will always be better than having ones that are simply more powerful than the hero. There's a reason that when he showed up again in Season 6 and Season 8 that I absolutely lost my mind. It's because I loved him and this character so much. It also went back to a far more darker tone comparable to Season 1 and 2, which was just something that really helped to stray it away from the more fantasy elements that they tried to employ in Season 3 and 4. Having a new Team Arrow as well, that largely comprised of new characters, really also did help them have this season feel more like a soft reboot on what had come beforehand, and really helped to freshen up the show. And while the first half of the season may not be as fast paced as something like Season 1 or even Season 2, it's in the back half of this season where it truly comes into its own, and it honestly does rival and even in some places overtake the first 2 seasons, in particular episode 17, which for me is one of the best flashback-centric episodes we've ever had of the show, where Oliver is tortured by Adrian into confessing that he enjoys killing, and then you have the series finale, which in my honest opinion is the best episode of Arrow ever. It is such a brilliantly well-crafted episode that brings the whole show together, and had that been the final ever episode of Arrow, I would have been completely content with that. and I would have had no qualms if they just ended the show there. The flashbacks this season as well also returned to that more dark tone that the current day storyline had. We saw Oliver go to Russia, and we saw his development with his relationship with Anatoly, all going around to when he eventually comes back to Lian, and of course we find him on the island as we did in the beginning of the pilot episode. It was just, again, just such a really nice way to bring this entire season full circle, and really have this feel like we were completing the first phase of the show, and then after season 5 we kind of enter this second phase of Arrow as a TV show, which was just such a brilliant idea. So with all of these amazing things that I'm talking about for season 5, why does it not crack the top 2? And the simple reason for that is that whilst I love this season and it has easily some of the best episodes of Arrow ever, it isn't consistent enough, which is something that season 1 and 2 have above this. There are, in my opinion, a few bad episodes in this season, which I just can't say for the first 2 seasons. You have the mid-season premiere, which I just did not think was a particularly great episode. It felt like it was definitely written by Olicity fanfiction writers. You had episode 13, which was the Mark Guggenheim written gun control episode, which was just absolutely abysmal, and probably one of the worst pieces of social commentary that I've seen on any Arrowverse show, until Supergirl did this exact same storyline a year later and somehow made it even worse. And to top all that off, you have episode 20, which was the Olicity bottle episode, which for me, I just have never enjoyed. But even with those 3 things, and even though I don't quite think it is just that little bit as good as season 1 and 2, I still dug the hell out of this season. And like I say, if anybody were to have this season at the top of their list, I would have no complaints, because it is that amazing. Okay, so at second place, and just narrowly missing out on the number 1 spot, we of course have season 1, where it all began, where the entire Arrowverse began. This was the starting point. This was just a hell of a first season. A writing team that was so confident of what they wanted to do, bringing this new edge to the Green Arrow character that just hadn't been seen before. And it's weird to think that 8 years later, this season still holds up so incredibly well. Stephen Amell in this role, while his acting might not be the best in this season, you can just tell how much he embodies this character, not just in the emotional scenes, but also in the action scenes as well. He's absolutely outstanding. I love the fact that in this season it feels so distinctly different. It's so grounded. There's no supernatural elements involved. Compare that to obviously what you got in season 8, where there's a lot more of that. This season, there's none of it. It's simply a very much gritty, realistic telling of this storyline. Oliver pulls no punches in this season. He will happily kill someone if he has to, which is just something that's so different to what he eventually adopts, of course, in season 2 and afterwards, where he has the whole no killing rule. The action sequences, absolutely amazing. I love the supporting characters. I loved having Tommy in this season. Earth 1 Laurel was great as well. Diggle and his relationship with Oliver and how that built. And for me, of course, you obviously have the introduction of Felicity, who I actually thought was actually quite good in the first 2 seasons, especially, like I said, because of the fact that they didn't try to shove it down your throat like I felt like they'd tried to do, especially in season 3 and 4. And the season all just culminated in that brilliant finale, which was, of course, Sacrifice, which was a fantastic finale. And I was just so surprised that a show like this, for its first ever season finale, had the balls to basically make the hero lose. Yeah, he saves half of the city, but half the city blows up, his best friend dies, and we just end it like that. I was just so aghast by how the writers were just that confident to just end it like that, and it worked brilliantly. The flashbacks as well as a formula, of course, introduced this season, brilliant as well, and I do really enjoy how they just got more and more intriguing as we went along, and it honestly got to a point where I was more invested with the flashbacks than I was at the present day, which is taking nothing away from the present day storyline, but I think it's just more credit to how good those flashbacks were. There's not a single bad episode in the whole season. Even when an episode doesn't blow you away, I never remember being bored with this season at all. I was always enjoying what was on screen, which for me is just one of the things that I really look for in a season of TV. I look for consistency. I look at a TV season and say, are there any episodes in this that I don't like? And with season 1, There aren't any at all. I enjoy every episode of this season. I thought Malcolm Merlyn as well was a really strong antagonist to have for the first season, having this proper dark reflection of our main protagonist. And with that as well, having this story arc follow through the whole season of The Undertaking, although it was quite simple, I think it worked really effectively given the story that they were trying to tell in this first season, and also because it just remained consistently engaging throughout. The only reason that it doesn't quite get to number one for me is that I don't feel like, whilst there's no bad episodes this season, they're all very good episodes, I don't feel like there is as many top tier episodes as there is with my number one. And it just ended up producing just that tiny bit better of a season. So for that reason, season 1 does unfortunately come in second place, but it is a brilliant first season, and for a first stab at what would become one of the most expansive shared universes in TV history, they hit a home run first time. Number one, of course, you guys will already know, based on process of elimination, it is season 2. This is not just my favourite season of Arrow, and for me, my favourite season of the Arrowverse. It's probably one of my favourite seasons of TV I've ever seen. In terms of superhero-wise, the only 2 seasons that overtake this are Daredevil Season 3 at number 1, Daredevil Season 1 at number 2, and then Arrow Season 2 at number 3. I really love this season that much. It is just brilliant. I have no flaws with this season. There's nothing about this season that I can criticise or say that I think is weak or lesser than other seasons. Everything on here is just firing on all cylinders, and it is absolutely brilliant. I love how this season really does feel like a companion piece to Season 1. Season 1 is basically the story of this rough around the edges hero who's utterly steadfast, intent on his ambition to stop the Undertaking and prevent the Glades from being destroyed, but he fails because he goes about it the wrong way. In Season 2, Oliver learns from his mistakes in Season 1 to ultimately rise above what he'd become and becomes the true hero and actually manages to save his city. And that's just what I loved about this season because of just how much it advanced him as a character and all the supporting characters around him. Oliver's story this season, just of him growing and trying to change his whole aim and ambition as the Arrow to not kill, honouring Tommy's final words, and putting that to the ultimate test when he comes up against Slade, who we of course met in the flashbacks from Season 1. Just brilliant. All of that and how well it was done. Of course, no Season 2 conversation would be complete without mentioning Deathstroke. He is, without question for me, the best villain in the Arrowverse. Prometheus is a close second, but for me, Deathstroke just had that personal connection with Oliver, which I just brought into so much. And then when you see these two go against each other in the present day, I just felt so much for these characters because I brought into their relationship. And so I think for that reason, alongside the fact that they have such a good rivalry and good chemistry with one another, as obviously Oliver did with Adrian in Season 5, I think that just gives Deathstroke that little bit more for me. And I just thought he absolutely was amazing this season, and Manu Bennett destroyed it. The flashbacks as well this season, for me, this is the best season for the flashbacks as well. They were just so good again because they built upon Season 1. They built upon the relationship with Oliver and Slade and Shadow, and how Shadow dies and how that creates a strain on Oliver and Slade's relationship, and then we see that play out in the present day. They just did such a good job of making the flashbacks and the current day storyline so integral to one another. It was just so brilliant because it made both of them so investing and equally as investing as one another. The supporting characters as well this season were also just brilliant as usual. Diggle again this season, fantastic. Felicity gets a bigger role in this season and she actually is given quite a good story again, while I still also enjoyed her character. Laurel in this season as well, really enjoyed what they did with her, putting her through this real struggle of coping with the events of the Season 1 finale and how she eventually ends up turning to drugs and alcohol. I just found that really tragic, but also a great storyline. Sarah Lance is introduced this season. Loved her as a Black Canary. The action was even better. They went even more elaborate with this drug, of course, introduced in the show called the Mirakuru, which is what Slade's injected with. And it just allowed for a lot more elaborate stunts and fight choreography. It was just brilliant. Like I said, everything about this season just basically takes what worked about Season 1, upgrades it on what maybe didn't work as well in season 1 and just made it brilliant. It was just truly, for me, this is a great season. And then I look back at the amount of great episodes there are in here. The 2-part storyline where we have Barry Allen introduced was amazing. The Promise, the episode where Slade's just in the Queen Mansion, and then in the past we see the events that led to Oliver and Slade becoming enemies. And then you have just the entire back 6 episodes of the season, which are honestly just 10 out of 10. It is just brilliant how good this season is. And as I said, me and Declan are doing the rewatch at the moment. We're in season 1. I cannot wait to get around again to season 2 because I love it that much. And like I say, it does hold a special place in my heart because I just think it does everything that works about Arrow and just makes it work so well. So with that being said, that is my number 1 pick. Season 2 of Arrow is my favourite season of the show. And not just my favourite season of Arrow, my favourite season of the whole Arrowverse.
We both know there's only one way this can end. To beat me, kid, you're gonna have to kill me. But in the moment of my death, you'll prove one thing. That you are a murderer.
So that is it for my ranking of all the seasons of Arrow from the very worst to the best. I want to thank you all very much for watching this video. I know this has been a very, very long watch, but the fact that you've watched it all the way to the end, I really, really do appreciate it. And the only thing I can ask for you guys to do is that if you're not subscribed to the channel already, please go ahead and subscribe right now. Give the video a like as well and share it around with all your friends so that they can all come in together and we can discuss what our favourite seasons and maybe our least favourite seasons of Arrow are. With that being said, cheers for watching, guys, and I hope to see you all again for the next video.